VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are on July 18th. I think we're sitting on the Vikings about to reveal some throwback uniforms in about an hour. So that'll be pretty sweet. They'll finally get off the schneid and get using those again. It's been about, 12 years since they've done anything with throwbacks. So we shall see what they come up with in the next hour or two. That'll be exciting. But what I'm going to talk to you guys and gals about today is the case for Dalton Risner, an offensive guard, who the Minnesota Vikings should sign. So here's the deal. The Vikings have about $18 million in cap space, which is rarefied air for a team that is habitually strapped for cash. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has navigated the cap rather successfully amid his competitive rebuild this late winter, spring, and summer. Said goodbye to folks that you love, like Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Patrick Peterson, Dalvin Tomlinson. Who else am I missing? I think that's about all. Maybe Danielle Hunter. Let's see what happens with that extension and or trade. But there's money to go explore free agents, and that's pretty neat because you can make an argument, especially once we start to see some of the rumblings out of camp, that the cornerback room needs a little help. If Danielle Hunter is traded, you better go explore free agency for Yannick Ngakoue or Justin Houston or somebody, because I would hate to limp into a season with Marcus Davenport and DJ Wanham. That is not going to cut it in the modern NFL, and maybe not in any era of the NFL for edge rushers. But I digress. The moral of the story is the Vikings have money to explore free agents, whether that's Risner, Marcus Peters, and Yannick Ngakoue. It's there. $18 million is substantial at this point on the calendar, because most of these dudes aren't going to break the bank. That happened in March. That happened in April. Now, it's nubbins for the guys that are left on the market. So this is going to be about 15 minutes worth of the case for Dalton Risner, why he makes sense. Here's what happened last year. Kevin O'Connell cruised into town with the new offense-first coaching staff. It was lovely. The Vikings won the division for the first time since 2017 and went 13-4 in all of these roller coaster-ass games. We'll take it. Let's hope they don't regress too much in 2023. One of the talkers throughout the season, even from me, was this offensive line looks improved. And that was true. However, that doesn't mean it was really good or great. It just wasn't shitty anymore. So I think that, myself included, we got complacent down the stretch of 2022 and even this offseason that said, hey, we weren't in the very bottom of the barrel last year, so we're doing something right. Yeah, but the goal is now to get to the top of the league for offensive line supremacy. That should be that's why the Eagles are so good. They've built the trenches, offense and defense. The Vikings should do the same on the offensive line because you know in your bones that we went through hell for about a decade with this offensive line problem. Now, they've settled the left end and the right end for offensive tackles. Christian Darrisaw and Brandon Hill. That's the hard part. That's fixed. So now they should think and act constructively, get deeper at offensive guard, because that's been a ginormous pain in the ass, 5, 6, 7 years? They can never quite get it right. Now there's a plan in 2023 with Ezra Cleveland and Ed Ingram. Fine, let's do it. Let's hope those guys are the real deal. But I want to put it out in the open that just because the offensive line was not horrendous last year, that doesn't mean it was really that good. It was just even Steven. We were thrilled to not have abhorrent offensive line play. And a large part of that is thanks to the offensive tackles. So the goal should be to get even better in the offensive line, not just mediocre. The first thing that signing Dalton Risner, who is going to be pretty affordable, again, this late in the summer, is you are hedging the bet against Ed Ingram. I fully understand that Ed Ingram was only a rookie last year and had his lumps seem to get better late in the season. We'll take it. But there's also a chance that you show up to training camp preseason or even week 1 or 2, and he's still just that mid-average guard that he was last year. I don't think that will happen. I do think he will take the jump. I trust Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's acumen to draft players until I see otherwise. So this dude is a second rounder. He should, in year 2, get better. So let's pray for that. We hope that it happens. But what if it doesn't? Do you really want to have Kirk Cousins smacked all over the place? If you had Dalton Risner, that hedges the bet against Ingram. So you're not going to hurt anything by signing Risner for, $5 million per season. when you have Ed Ingram going into his second year. In the event Ingram doesn't take the jump and you seriously believe that you're a playoff contender, you need to improve. Adding Risner, who has a documented history of production with the Broncos, hedges the bet against Ingram. We don't know if Ingram's going to make the leap. If he does, great. If he doesn't, you can pivot to Risner or, I guess, Chris Reed if he's still on the roster by the end of roster trim downs. There's also the Ezra Cleveland situation. Ezra Cleveland, a guard, is entering his contract year, but nobody really cares because he doesn't have the football in his hand. He's not Kirk Cousins. He's not like KJ Osborne. Cleveland enters the final year of his rookie deal, and it's kind of like we'll see what happens next season if they re-sign him or not. Well, I am here to tell you that if they don't want to spend $8 to $10 million per season on Cleveland, they can sign Risner now for however 2 or 3 years, $5-6 million per year, and you immediately save money versus what Cleveland will cost next year. Because Cleveland's a pretty good guard. I don't know that anybody is crazy excited about him or pounding the table for him to remain a Viking next offseason. If he does, great. Kind of like Bradbury. We'll see. If he does, nobody's going to bitch too much. But he's a good run blocker. He fits the Vikings mold. He's a good run blocker, but just kind of decent at pass protection. So you can bet your bottom line that when March hits next year, Cleveland's going to want a handsome deal. I would say 3 years, 24, 3 years, $30 million, something like that. But if you sign Risner this summer when the market for him is peanuts, you don't have to worry about Cleveland next year. That's what I'm getting at. So you have it twofold. Hedge the bet against Ingram, and then if Cleveland wants to walk next year, that's cool. We got Risner, who's not crazy old, to take over at, that would be left guard if it's Cleveland. Now, when I talk about the quarterback getting smacked around, I'm guessing because you watch a show like this that you've watched some or all of the Netflix quarterback documentary. It should have screamed into your face that Kirk Cousins got his ass beat last year. He was smacked around, his insides were ravaged, and he's just such a nice guy that he's like, shucks, we'll get him next time. And you could even see some of his frustration, was it in episode 3, when they highlighted his rib injury, getting beat down against Washington, the game that they won, got smacked again against the Bills, another wild game that they won. But front and center, I think it was, come to Jesus moment about the Vikings offensive line that said, all right, well, they weren't absolutely terrible last year, but Cousins still got knocked on his ass. You saw it repeatedly in the Netflix documentary. So with all of the, enthusiasm about folks realizing that it's not just some excuse that Dustin Baker has about Kirk Cousins every year, he got thrown around. Well, if you get Dalton Risner, or at least have him for depth if you love Cleveland and Ingram, I think it makes sense. You'd be telling the QB1, who's going to be 35 when the season starts, hey, we're doing everything we can to protect you there, buddy. We like what we got with continuity. They're showcasing the same 5 guys from last year. But by the way, we got Dalton Risner in case things go wonky. If one of these guys sucks or one of these guys is hurt, you don't have to worry about like a Dakota Dozier type coming in and ruining the offensive game plan. So I think the Netflix documentary, at least in my mind, maybe it's too honed of a take, really showed that Cousins did get beat up. And how do you fix that? Well, you go sign a veteran guard who hedges the bet. Now, this one is also very interesting, this point. Dalton Risner's MO is the opposite of what the Vikings have targeted and utilized for the last 6-7 years. Risner is a better pass blocker than he is run blocker. You can even say that his run blocking isn't very good. Habitually, his PFF score, Risner that is in the 60s, 62, 63, and you're like, it's all right. But it's the type of 62 grade that's flipped per the way the Vikings do things. Generally, Risner in 2021 and 2022, when you look up at the end of the year or you pull up the metrics on PFF, his pass blocking grade is about 72 or 73, and the run blocking is the one that's in the low 60s or high 50s. Well, it really hasn't worked in the last 7 years to employ this run-first offensive line. Why not sign a guy who does the pass protection part? Because in front of the entire world on a streaming service like Netflix, you're seeing Cousins get abused. Go sign a guard who does the pass protection part right. And this guy is going to be affordable on top of that. So I think that it's frustrating that for some reason, like the type that Vikings, especially Rick Spielman, had was to go, all right, we're going to go get a run blocker, and if he pass blocks a little bit, great. Then the guards really hasn't gotten the job done. That's why you see Cousins just brutalized. So I think getting Risner flips everything. It changes the tone. You're getting offensive guards that pass block better than they run block. And let's try it out. Come on. A couple other points here. The affordability is the big factor. I don't think that Risner is going to get $10 million per year. I think now is the time to strike if you want a pass-blocking first offensive guard. Some team is going to sign him. I don't know if they're waiting for training camp to figure out if their guy sucks or if somebody gets injured. But the Vikings can get out in front of this and say, Mr. Risner, come join us. You're not very expensive, and it'll be great to have you around for at least 1 year, maybe 2 or 3. The affordability factor is there, and it may not be the case next year for Cleveland, or if Risner signs a 1-year deal this year, and then as a free agent again, he might be able to command more. So the time is now if you want to get this guy at an affordable rate. And the other two things, this one's huge. If you believe in the efficacy of Risner to the Vikings actually happening, Chris Cooper is the Vikings offensive line coach. Where did he work before? I feel like I'm doing the Brian Windhorst ESPN, the NBA meme. Chris Cooper worked for the Denver Broncos. He was an assistant offensive line coach from 2019 to 2021. Where did Dalton Risner work? That same team. He has the connection. I've said on the show before, and I'll continue to say it for some reason or another, ties between players and coaches, or coaches and coaches, or players and players mean everything in sports. So, for the mere fact that Chris Cooper is the Vikings offensive line coach, and he was a coach for Risner for 3 damn years in Denver, there's already a relationship. It wouldn't be weird 1 iota if Chris Cooper picked up the phone, said, hey, Dalton, what's happening, Playboy? You want to come play for the Vikings? We're buddies. We know each other. That tie is there. So this is not some episode of VikesNow that's some big long shot like, the Vikings should have signed DeAndre Hopkins last week or something like that. No, we're not being outrageous. There is a connection here for a team with a suspect offensive line that doesn't pass block very well. You have a commodity who has the connection between Cooper and Risner. The commodity pass blocks well, and he's available at an affordable rate. It all makes sense. Finally, I'll leave you with this. Dalton Risner is 28 years old. Offensive linemen can play longer than, running backs or wide receivers. I don't quite know the methodology of it, but it's not weird if you look up and see a starting NFL guard at, age 33 or so. So Risner is not ancient. He's just coming off that rookie deal. He came from the Bradbury draft, I believe. So he's in his prime. He's 28 years old. And if you're Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and you sign on his dotted line, you're getting some of the best years of his career. This isn't a show about some asshole that's 36 years old and you're trying to squeeze the prime out of him. No, this guy is very much in the age range where it would make sense to finagle a deal. So this guy fully endorses Risner to the Vikings because I want this team to start thinking like a contender. And that, all right, well, we got Ed Ingram and Ezra Cleveland got big plans for them. Great, so do I. But get deeper on the offensive line. And when you pull up the depth chart for the Philadelphia Eagles, especially on defense, you're like, my God, do they need all those guys? Well, that's the team that's getting to the Super Bowl, so you might as well emulate it and get as deep as possible. And I think Risner does that. I'll be back with Josh Fry tomorrow. We'll probably speak on these throwback uniform news tidbit that's about to hit, and then whatever talker he comes up with, we're going to chat tomorrow. Skol, baby.